So today, what I am going to cover is I am going to talk about what the fitness industry can teach us about the dog training industry. And I apologize. My name is Janee Wise-Jansen, and I am the owner of Golden Heart Dog Training, and I am located in Des Moines, Iowa. So let's go ahead and get started. So what I've done here is I've just created a quick outline of everything that I am going to be talking about today. So first, I'm just going to cover who I am and what I do. Most of you probably don't know exactly who I am. And then I'm going to talk about what is this topic. I'm going to then talk about why it actually matters. I'm then going to dive into the parallels between the two industries that I am going to speak about. I'm then going to wrap everything up, and then I will answer any questions that you guys may still have remaining about the topic at hand. All right, so a little bit about me. As I stated, my name is Janee Wise-Jansen, and I started my journey into dogs when I decided that I would go and get my bachelor's degree in animal science. I ended up going to Iowa State University here in Iowa and got my degree in animal science with an emphasis in companion animal management. I also have minors in psychology as well as entrepreneurial studies. So when I went into my degree, I thought that, the next step for me was going to be a veterinarian. And then I had the opportunity to observe a kneecap surgery on a dog, and I almost fainted. And then I decided, you know what, maybe that's not quite the field I want to go into. So then what I did is I decided that I still wanted to continue my education. And so I went to Hunter College in New York City to get my master's degree in psychology. And so my degree is in animal behavior and conservation. Once I finished my degree, I decided that I would give dog training a try. And so here I am. And I have been a professional dog trainer for the past 5.5 years. And so I am the owner and educator at Golden Heart Dog Training, LLC. And then I also have my CPDT, KA, which stands for Certified Professional Dog Trainer, Knowledge Assessed. So that's a little bit about me. And then I know that people like to know, about the guys at the end of my leashes. So here in this photo, you can see that I have two golden retrievers. Hamilton is on my left and Hamilton is on the left in this picture and Summit is on the right. So Hamilton was a dog that I got at 10 weeks of age, and the goal for him was to become a service dog. But unfortunately, at about 1.5 years, he got re-careered due to his leash reactivity, which I am still working on to this day. And then I have Summit. He's my 3-year-old guy, and he got re-careered at about 9 months of age due to his inability to focus on his handler in public situations. So he essentially is just far too friendly, wants to say hi to everybody that he sees and interacts with. And so they decided that service work was not the best work for him, and thus we decided to adopt him from that program. So what sets me apart when it comes to being a dog trainer and when it comes to the topic that I'm going to speak about today is that I have been in both the fitness and the dog training industry for quite some time. So I, during my undergrad, worked at the gym on our campus for 4 years. And then I also actually currently have a part-time job at a gym right now. And so what I've been able to glean from the fitness industry have been these parallels that I'm about to speak to you guys about. And I have found it instrumental when it comes to some of the things that I implement with the language that I use, with the marketing that I use, and just with the way that I speak about the things that I do in general. And so I really wanted to share that with others because obviously not everybody has the same background that I do. And so I thought that it would be helpful for me to kind of share, whether you're a dog trainer or a dog guardian. I want people to kind of see that these parallels can actually help us improve the industry that we're in. All right, so what do I do as a trainer? I train and educate using positive reinforcement and force-free training methods, as I assume most of us on this call do. I use science-based approaches in order to address underlying behaviors in dogs. When I implement and create plans, I am looking to benefit both the dog and the owner in the situation. I always strive to empower my guardians. I always strive to disperse relatable information and information that's easy to digest. I found before I kind of got really into this industry that it always felt like dog training was very militant. It was something that honestly I wasn't even sure that I wanted to be a part of. And then I found this community and I saw what it can be. And so that's what I want to give to dog guardians everywhere, is to show them that the things that we're providing for them don't have to be these super rigid structured programs, but we can have fun and actually enjoy working with our dogs. So let's dive into the topic at hand. So what is this and why are we even talking about it? So today, what I'm going to talk about is the dog training industry versus the fitness industry. And so what I have done here on the screen is I have broken each of these industries into two categories. Okay, so in dog training, you can see on the top of my screen that I have positive reinforcement and force-free training versus balance training. And then for the fitness industry, I have sustained fitness / intuitive eating versus quick fitness and diet culture. And so the way that I'm going to speak about both of these industries today and the sides of them, I'm going to speak as though they are sides of a coin. But what I actually want you to remember is that both of these, the dog training industry and the fitness industry, these sides are not actually sides, it's a spectrum. Okay, so if you think about it, there are some people who use a variety of dog training methods, and there are people who, eat a variety of different ways. And so it doesn't mean that everything I'm talking about is black and white. It just helps to create sides of the coin when I'm actually talking about it with you guys here today. So what I'm going to start with is I am going to start by talking about the dog training side of things and kind of talk about how we've broken these categories up. And some of you may know this, but for those of you who don't, I will kind of go into detail a little bit more about what makes positive reinforcement and force-free different than the balance training side of our industry. So when it comes to dog training, what we do is we break training up using operant conditioning. And so operant conditioning is a method of learning that falls under behaviorism and psychology. And it is defined as a method of learning where the consequences of a response determine the probability of it being repeated. So as you can see on the screen, I have four quadrants. And so what we're going to do is we're going to explain a little bit more about what each quadrant means. So when you see the word reinforcement, that means that a behavior will likely increase. And when you see the word punishment, it means that a behavior will likely decrease. The word positive means that we're adding something, and then the word negative means that we're removing or taking something away. A lot of times I think that people tend to think positive and negative have these good or bad connotations to them. And when it comes to dog training and the way in which we're breaking it up using operant conditioning, that's not the way I want you to think about it. So positive simply means to add and negative simply means to remove something, okay? So what I want to do is I want to kind of talk about what quadrants fall under each approach. So the positive reinforcement force-free approach contains positive reinforcement as well as negative punishment. And then on the flip side of that, we have the balanced approach, which contains negative reinforcement and positive punishment. Now, like I said, this is a spectrum. And so what you may see is that some balance trainers may also use quadrants from the force-free positive reinforcement side of things. So just because someone is, say, using food in their training or using a clicker does not mean that they are a positive reinforcement trainer. So just remind yourselves of that as you're, seeing things maybe on social media or elsewhere. So I also want to just give an example for people who may not fully be able to understand what each of these quadrants means. So an example of positive reinforcement would be to feed your dog a treat, for performing a sit because you would like them to sit again in the future. Okay. You cue a sit, you feed a sit, you'd like that to happen again in the future. An example of negative punishment would be to ignore your dog when they jump on you. So you're removing your attention in order to get the jumping to stop. An example of negative reinforcement would be to withhold food from your dog until they sit. And then an example of positive punishment would be to physically correct with a leash jerk in order to get your dog to stop pulling. So those are just a couple examples of behaviors that would fall under each of those quadrants in dog training. So now that we've talked about that, let's move into the fitness industry side of our topic today. So when I say fitness industry today, what I'm going to focus on is I'm going to focus on the nutritional portion of the fitness industry. So as you can see here on my screen, I have definitions of what intuitive eating and dieting are. So those are the two sides of the coin that I'm going to focus on today during this topic. So let's go over each of these definitions. So intuitive eating, it says you make peace with all types of food. Hold on, let me just move this zoom. You make peace with all types of food. Food is not inherently good or bad. You listen to your body and you eat what feels good. And then we have dieting. Dieting typically refers to individual short-term attempts to lose weight by restricting the amount or the types of foods that they are consuming. And so when it comes to these definitions, what you can see is that they give consumers some type of direction, right? The intuitive eating side is essentially giving them peace with the food that they are consuming, whereas the dieting side is kind of giving them a little bit more structure and control around the foods that they are eating. So those are the two sides of the coin for each, those are the two sides of the coin that we're going to address for each of the industries that we're going to talk about today. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk to you about why this topic actually matters. All right, so let's talk about why this topic matters and why these comparisons matter. So the first reason why this matters is because we are running into this problem. Well, I consider it a problem to a degree, that there is just so much information for us to consume and for us to essentially have to navigate through, right? Especially with the rise of social media. And so what I'm finding is that there are a lot of differing opinions on literally everything, and especially within these two industries. And so what I did was I just kind of wanted to look and see what are the statistics behind this. And so what I found was that the Pew Information Center released information in 2020. They did a poll and found that over half, so 52% of Americans get their information from a digital platform. So 25% were from news websites, 12% were search results, 11% were social media, and 3% were podcasts. But when they broke that down even further by age, what they found was that those who were 18 to 29 used social media 42% of the time to get their information. And so the thing about social media is that people can pretty much share whatever they want on these platforms. I mean, there probably are some things that are restricted, but like they can share and pretend or say that they're an expert in any field that they want to. And so when people say that they know how to do something and that they've learned about this topic through self-education, they spread this information through social media, and a lay consumer does not always realize that the information they are getting is from someone who is not credentialed or someone who actually has education or background in it. And so because I see this very highly in both of these industries, that is one reason why this topic matters. So another reason why this topic matters is because, as I just showed you on the previous slide with those sides of the coin, is that we have dueling sides in both of these industries, which leads to confusion and mistrust of consumers. So if someone were to hire me as a dog trainer and I were to show them how to teach their dog how to do a behavior, then what they've likely done is they've probably seen that behavior taught 3 different ways on social media. And so now what I have to do is I have to tell them why the way that I'm teaching them is the right way, and the way that I'm teaching them is better than something that they've seen on the internet, right? And so what that does is it leads to a mistrust in us as professionals. And the same thing happens on the fitness side of things as well. But what also happens is it creates mistrust. And so what I have found is that specifically around nutrition, people mistrust their own bodies, and they mistrust what they're doing for their bodies because there's someone on the internet telling them that they are doing it wrong. And so the mistrust that is created, whether it be in professionals or in themselves, is something that I see in both of these industries. So like, if you think about it, right, like the diet industry will tell you that you're supposed to track your food. You're not supposed to eat over 1,500 calories. You're supposed to have, 150 grams of protein. And then if a consumer isn't doing those exact things, but they have been doing what they feel like is fueling their body, then now that leads to mistrust in themselves. So that's another reason why this matters. The third reason is that this topic and comparisons are important is because of the marketing strategies that are used in both of these industries. In each industry, the opposing sides have areas that they tend to highlight, or their points of emphasis that they tend to highlight. So in the fitness and the nutrition side, there's the diet side that will give you the rapid results that a lot of people tend to want. If you just stick with their plan for X amount of days or X amount of time. But then on the flip side, you have this intuitive eating side of things that's telling you, we can give you autonomy. We can give you your body back. We can, teach you how to actually read your own hunger cues, things like this. And so those are their points of emphasis. And so for example, so essentially, they're both emphasizing very different points, and they both are targeting different mindsets and expectations of consumers. All right, so the last, and what I would say the biggest reason why this comparison matters is because, like in the dog training industry, the fitness industry too is seeing a shift from how things were to how they potentially could be in the future. So let me explain. So with the nutrition side of things, we've always been told that our health is dependent on how much we weigh, what our BMI is. And if your BMI is not this, then you need to lose weight, right? We're told that summer's right around the corner, so you need to drop X amount of pounds in order to, get your bikini body or whatever they may say. And now what we're finding is that this other side, this intuitive eating side of things, is coming in and saying, wait a second, that doesn't seem right. Why are we taking away our body's ability to, give us those hunger cues, to tell us what we need, right? And so essentially what the intuitive eating side of things is doing is they're working against history. Diet culture is ingrained into our society, especially as females. And so the intuitive eating side of things is kind of tackling that head on. And what you can do is you can apply that exact same thing to dog training. The balance training, the militant style training that came out of World War II is something that we now, especially as positive reinforcement trainers and advocates, are saying we don't need those methods. There are better ways to do things, right? And we have the ability now to question why we are using some of the techniques and the tools and the training methods that we were using. And so we found more humane ways. And so what we both, intuitive eating as well as positive reinforcement, are now fighting against history to say, we can do this better. And so what I have done is I have found some pointers and things that I believe that we in the dog training industry can take from the fitness/nutritional industry professionals who are fighting the same type of battle that we are. So what I want to do now is I want to jump in and I want to chat about the first parallel that I see between the two industries. So parallel number one that I see, as I've already kind of chatted about, are these two competing sides in each industry. So we have competing mindsets, we have competing ideologies, we have competing training styles, right? And these competing ideas lead to conflict among consumers as to which is better, which one is the best. It can, as I've notated, lead to potential mistrust of professionals, because people can be very persuasive, and people can edit these videos in a really cool way to make people think certain things. Excuse me. It can also lead to, as I've notated, mistrust of themselves when it comes to a lot around that nutrition piece of things. So what I want to do now is I want to look at both industries, and I want to look at these competing sides, and I just want to show you from a consumer's perspective what they are seeing with each of these dueling sides. So let's start with the dog training industry. So on the screen, what I have done is I went on Instagram and I typed in balanced training for my photo on the left, and then I typed in positive reinforcement for my photo on the right. And what I did was I found graphics essentially depicting what they're saying the benefits of their type of training are, right? And so on the e-collar side of on the balance side, the e-collar training, it says the benefits of it are that you can gain clear communication, you can gain a reliable dog, your dog can have off-leash freedom, and you can create a better relationship with your dog, okay? So if I saw that, and then I next saw this, what are the benefits of positive reinforcement training? What we're seeing on there is that it fosters confidence and well-being, provides emotional safety for dogs, decreases unwanted behaviors, positively impacts your relationship with your dog, but also protects your dog's mental health, okay? If I saw both of those, I would be extremely confused, because to me, what I'm seeing is that, well, both of them say that I can create a really good relationship with my dog, right? And both of them to some degree, obviously on the e-collar side more, but that there's some level of obedience that's going to be taught, right? Like decreasing unwanted behaviors. But what I want us to see here is that as a consumer, if you're just typing in dog training and these are the types of images that pop up, this is what we as positive reinforcement trainers are competing against. And that can be really, really confusing for consumers. So now what I want to do is I want to pop over, and we're going to do the exact same thing in the fitness industry side of things. All right, so on the left-hand side of the screen, I have a snapshot from an intuitive eating dietitian. And then on the right side, I have pulled from the Noom, which is a Noom Weight Loss, which is a digital health company who claims to use psychology to build healthy habits, okay? So on the intuitive eating side of things, and this is all based around Thanksgiving, by the way. So two different mindsets, competing sides over, how we're going to approach Thanksgiving. So this is a friendly reminder that you deserve nourishment today and every day. Give yourself permission to eat all the foods. There is no need to earn or burn your Thanksgiving meal. So that's the intuitive side of things. Now, if we look at the dieting side of things, we see Noom saying, Thanksgiving Day tips and tricks. Stay on track and enjoy your holidays. And then there was 5 slides, but I only picked this one. It says, make a plan, build holiday meals and parties into your daily diet and exercise schedule. Plan ahead exactly what you will be having before Thanksgiving begins. So once again, you can see if I type in something about, Thanksgiving meals or something like that on Instagram, and these two things pop up, Well, that could be super, super confusing because one is telling me to trust my body, right? You don't need to earn or burn any specific amount of calories for the food in which you're going to consume. And that's very emotion based. And then we have the Noom side, that diet side, that's talking about planning, talking about staying on track, talking about building an exercise and knowing what you're going to eat. And so there's a lot of discussion in theirs about the structure and making sure you stay on this plan that they've created for you. Okay. So once again, you can see the level of confusion that can be created as a consumer. So what I have done now is I'm going to talk about what we as dog trainers and dog advocates and guardians in the positive reinforcement space can learn from the nutrition side of the fitness industry. All right, so from these competing sides, what can we learn? The first thing is that when it comes to being a positive reinforcement trainer or consumer, it is important to clearly communicate your needs if you are a consumer, and then to clearly communicate your position or stance if you are a trainer, okay? Because what the intuitive side, the intuitive nutrition side of the fitness industry does is they do a really good job at stating what they are and what they do. And we as a positive reinforcement training community can continue to do that same thing, okay? And then the other thing that I think that we can draw from them is don't be afraid to deep dive into both sides of an industry, right? So obviously dog training. So for me as a positive reinforcement trainer, I am not going to maybe watch a video put out by a balance trainer. I want to know what they're doing on their side and what selling points they think that they have that I don't. And as a consumer, it's really important to deep dive to make sure you're getting to know what are these trainers' philosophies, what are their credentials, what tools are they actually using? Because what I find is that so often these things get buried into people's websites, into their Instagrams, into their social medias, and it's never explicitly stated. If someone says on their website, I cater my training to each dog because they're an individual, what I have learned is that they are likely a balance trainer. Because I guess I'm not sure what language otherwise they would use to state that they use tools outside of, positive reinforcement. And so what I have found is that intuitive nutritionists have done years of research, okay, when it comes to learning about the diet industry. And some of them have actually, I would say actually most of them, especially like I said, if they're female, have at some point been a part of that industry themselves. And so what it does is it gives them insight and it gives them empathy when their consumers and their clients come to them. And so I think too, as dog trainers, as dog guardians, just as positive reinforcement activists, we too need to have a little bit of empathy around people who were sold this thing and now are looking for help in a different direction. So like I said, don't be afraid to take a look at other people's, websites and things like that, because it can actually teach us a lot to learn about the other side. All right, so that's parallel number one. Let's jump into parallel number two. All right, so parallel number two is where we can kind of see some mindset differences between our two sides of the coin in each of these industries. So as I have listed here on the screen, there's this instant gratification side of things versus change over time. And so for instant gratification, what I tend to see is that the dieting industry, as well as the balance training industry, are the sides of the coin in those two industries that are going to kind of seek instant gratification. And then there is the intuitive eating side, as well as the positive reinforcement side, that's going to seek change over time and kind of putting the work in where it's needed in order to create a product that's long lasting, right? And the thing I want to remind you guys of is that instant gratification is a very large driving force for a lot of consumers and just a lot of humans in general. So it shouldn't be shocking to us that if they see something on the internet or that they hear something that can happen like in a snap, that they're not going to be interested in what that thing is. So what I've done is I have videos on both of my next slides. I'm going to try to pause them as quickly as I can so that we can watch them in succession. But what I will say is that the balance training video, which will be the second one that I play, I just want to do a trigger warning. Okay. In my opinion, there's a level of abuse that's happening in the video. So if that makes you uncomfortable, like I said, I'm going to get it paused as quickly as I can as I slide to my next screen. But when I play it, I'll tell you again that I'm about to play it and it's about 20 seconds. So you can just, maybe mute your audio, or turn your head as I play that video. So let me skip to my next slide. Okay. Pause. Okay, sorry about that. I don't like that it does that. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we are going to look at videos, like I said, from a positive reinforcement trainer, as well as a balance trainer, both of which I found on Instagram. JW Dog Training, I've been following her for a long time. And then this Dog Daddy, I've seen his stuff all over the internet. And it's, for me, a little cringeworthy and emotionally triggering, but it's important for us to look at. So what I want to say about these videos before I play them is that they are both videos that are addressing reactivity using two different training methods. So I'm going to play the positive reinforcement one from JW Dog Training first. And then, like I said, I'll let you know before I play that second video. And there is audio on both of them. All right, so we'll play the first one. All right, so that's the first video. So that's the positive reinforcement reactivity video. And so trigger warning, I'm going to press play on this balance training video. And like I said, it's 20 seconds and like there's likely, in my opinion, abuse happening, but I'm going to go ahead and play it now. Okay, so both of those videos are videos that I got off Instagram, meaning that they're obviously available to the public. And so in the positive reinforcement video, Juliana is talking about how they use fake dogs in their training when it comes to reactivity, because the silhouette and different things like that do mimic a real dog. And so what I'm seeing in this video as a consumer is that, okay, we're starting small, but then that still means we have to work our way up to a real dog, right? So like, this is not the only video when it comes to reactivity. And all of us who are in the positive reinforcement space know that reactivity is going to be change over time and repetitions of exposure and all of this type of stuff, right? So essentially, this video shows me that there are far more steps that are going to need to be taken in order to get my dog to a place that likely a lot of our clients are searching for. Okay, so change over time with the positive reinforcement side of things. Now, in this video of him training a dog to not be leash reactive, essentially what this video is showing consumers is that within a short span of time, I mean minutes, he's changing a dog's behavior, right? The dog was once reactive and now it's no longer reactive. And I'm not going to go into all of this why, but what a consumer sees is that, okay, he changed that dog's behavior very quickly. There was no signing up for, 20 sessions with the trainer. It's like he takes my dog and he changes them in an instant. And so that's what we're competing against. And that's a really hard thing to compete against when instant gratification and changes that can be seen to be quick are something that a lot of consumers are looking for. So Those are the two sides of our coin when it comes to dog training and the mindset differences between how the training is actually done. And so now we're going to flip over and we are going to look at the nutrition, fitness industry side of things. Once again, I'm going to try to pause these videos as quickly as possible, and then I'll play them one at a time. Okay, so these two videos, one is an intuitive eating nutritionist like commercial, and then the other one is a South Beach diet, TV commercial that I think was viewed or shown 5 years ago. So let's look at these and look at how different what the different mindsets are in each of them.
Hey, Janee, just a heads up that we don't have audio.
Oh, there's no audio on your side?
Nope.
On either video?
Nope.
Oh, shoot. Okay. I wonder why, because on my side, they're playing with audio. I'm trying to think if... All right, well, maybe the audio isn't so important and I can just kind of explain. I was hoping that they would work, but first time embedding videos, so my fault, you guys. All right, so since you guys can't actually hear what these videos are saying, the dog training ones weren't as important to hear. These ones are going to be a little bit more important. So essentially, with the intuitive eating commercial that I found, what she'll talk about in it is things like how she's learned to trust her body, how her body is changing over time, and how her relationship with food has changed over time. Okay, so that's the intuitive eating side of it. And then with the dieting side of it, I mean, a lot of us have probably seen some level of a diet commercial out there. This one I found to be a little bit more extreme, I would say. And so essentially what they do is they have some testimonials from people saying, I've lost 15 pounds in 28 days and these types of things, right? So they have this, once again, instant gratification where it's like, if you stick to our plan for this, what we would consider relatively short period of time, the results you could see could be tremendous. So those are the two fitness industry nutrition side of things commercials that I found. And like I said, it's okay that we couldn't see those. I can easily explain those here. So now what I want to do once again is talk about how we in the dog training industry can learn from the fitness industry when it comes to difference in mindset. Okay. All right, so what can we learn? So I think one of the biggest things for me is making sure that we try to do a good job at not villainizing people's past actions, right? So those in the intuitive eating space realize that a lot of this diet culture, as I've talked about, has been ingrained in people's minds. And so they realize that it's not their fault, right? Like, it's part of our society, it's part of our culture. And they do not fault people for having tried, 1 to 1,000,000 types of diets, because it's something that's ingrained in our society. And they realize that they are working very hard against history when it comes to changing people's mindsets around nutrition and dieting and all of these different types of things. And so, as I said, in dog training, we're doing the exact same thing. Positive punishment is ingrained in so many people. If I asked the older generation, how did you train your dog? There was likely some level of punishment that was implemented in their training, right? And so we as positive reinforcement trainers have a lot to overcome when it comes to changing people's mindsets, when it comes to what type of training they want to do. And so if we can be as I've said before, a little bit more empathetic. If someone has tried some type of, positive punishment tool or some type of training that we personally do not use in our training practice, dive a little bit deeper and understand the why, because what I'm going to guess is that someone in their family has done it before, right? Or they saw it on TV. We all know who that guy is that has, brought forward a lot of methods that a lot of us don't agree with. And so they are victims in all of this, in my opinion. And so try not to villainize their past actions. Another thing too is to be aware of how you speak about those who think or do differently than you do. Okay. So those in the intuitive nutrition space will call out harmful or potentially harmful things that are being done by well-known individuals or well-known companies, like diet companies. But I hardly, if ever, see them calling out consumers specifically. So when we talk about the other side of of our industry, so this balanced side of training, what I strive for us to do a better job at is try to be more factual with the information that you're giving and leave as much emotion out of it as possible. And so, like I said, in that video that I played, you guys couldn't hear the audio, but you could see everything that was happening in that video. And so I can imagine, just like myself, that video sparked some type of emotion. Like, I was angry the first time that I watched that video and disgusted that, people think that that's training, but that's what we're working against. And so what I would say is that when it comes to seeing something like that video that I played, that is emotionally triggering, right? Like, our industry, we carry a lot of emotion with us. And so what I want you to do is, if you see a video that sparks an emotion in you, and it will tend to be someone from the balance side of training, what I want us to do better about is taking a breath and not immediately jumping onto our stories or jumping onto Instagram or TikTok or whatever and just like spewing our emotions out. Because when you do that, people stop listening. So instead, what I want people to start to do is I want them to start to take a breath, watch the video again, and find factual points that we can actually point out and say, these are the reasons that I disagree with this video. Instead of just jumping on and saying, choke chains are the worst, prong collars are the worst, which I think both of those things. But if you can be more factual in your delivery and less emotion-based, people are going to listen to you more. If we come from a place of only emotion, people are going to minimize the words that are coming out of our mouths. And so if you think about it, the diet industry does a really good job at picking specific words that they use, at picking, like, doing all of their research before they actually put something out. And I think we in the positive reinforcement space can do a better job at that as well. So now let's move on to our third and final parallel that I do see between the two industries. So the third and final parallel, I would say, is the language utilization and the marketing that's used when it comes to selling their side of the industry. So what I've observed is that shame-seeking and scare tactics tend to be used more by the diet industry as well as balance trainers. And then when it comes to the intuitive eating side of things and the positive reinforcement space, there tends to be more encouragement and empowering language that is used around the dogs as well as the humans attached to the end of the leash. So what I want to do is the exact same thing that we've done with the last two parallels, is we're going to kind of talk about some of the language and marketing that's used, and then we'll talk about how that the fitness industry can help us grow in the dog training world. So when it comes to the dog training industry, these are words that I tend to hear on both sides. So for the positive reinforcement force-free side of things, I tend to hear the word cue, well-being, enrichment, freedom, desensitize, and counter conditioning. And then on the balance side of things, I tend to hear things like command, dominance, alpha, leadership, obey, and correction. And so on the positive reinforcement side, there tends to be an emphasis on consumers' emotions, as well as their dog's mental health and well-being. While on the balance side, there tends to be a focus more heavily on the obedience and control of the dog that's on the leash, or not on the leash, I guess, if they're on an e-collar in front of the human. And I find that the balance training industry is far more likely to shame people into training their dogs. And so what do I mean by that? I have seen countless videos of people saying like, oh, if your dog gets out the front door and you don't have a 100% recall, your dog's going to get hit by a car and die, right? And so there's fear, there's shame, there's concern around these, potentially harmful behaviors to our dogs. And thus we're like, oh my goodness, I need to train my dog to have a good recall, to be better. And so then these people are seeking these trainers out. But all these trainers are doing is using these fear and scare tactics in order to make people feel bad. Or they're doing this thing where they're like, your dog jumps on you, you're not a good dog guardian, right? And then it just shame spirals, and then people hire these trainers and so on and so forth. But it's important to remember that appealing to people's fears and potential mishaps it plays a part, right? Like I said, people are still hiring these trainers. And so it's important for us to know that that tactic does work. While in my opinion, it's not right and never will be right, it works. And so that's important for us to remember. So what I want to do now is we're going to do the exact same thing and talk about the fitness industry and the terms and things that they use. All right, so when we're looking at the intuitive eating side of things, I see words such as freedom, choice, unrestricted, move your body, and trust your body. And then on the dieting side of things, I see things like restriction, all or nothing, cheat meal, work off your meal, self-control. And so on the intuitive eating side of things, they tend to appeal more to people's emotions and self-acceptance and validate people's feelings, right? Whereas the diet side of things tends to lead people to mistrust their bodies and the cues that their bodies would naturally provide to them, like a hunger cue. I'm hungry, so I'm going to eat. The diet industry says, but how many calories have you eaten today? You don't need to eat any more food today, even though your body is clearly stating that it's hungry, right? And so they also advertise that like weight loss is happiness. And so essentially what they're telling people is like, the current weight you're at is not a good weight. And if you're skinnier, then essentially you could be happier. And so once again, there's a lot of shame around that. There's a lot of mistrust and confusion that is created. And so those are the two sides of the fitness industry when it comes to that marketing and language utilization that they do use. And so what we're going to do now, once again, is talk about how we can use what we learned from the fitness industry in the dog training world. So what I have written on the screen says using language that targets consumers' fears or desires does work. And so these large diet companies would not exist if speaking to consumers' fears didn't work, right? And so we as positive reinforcement trainers need to understand and start to figure out what specific skills our consumers need help with, advertise that we know and can address those concerns, and then we talk about how we are going to actually modify and change their behavior, right? Explain to them more about our methodologies, talk to them about the reasons why we use the training techniques that we do, why it may take a little bit longer for us to change or modify behavior than just like slapping an e-collar on a dog. Because What I fear happens, and actually it's funny because I looked at my own website and I think I probably used the word obedience like 3 times. Whereas if someone is seeking out a dog trainer, then they likely are looking to have help with their dog jumping on people, their dog's recall, these types of obedience-based behaviors. And if on my website, all that I write about is their dog's well-being, and all I talk about is, enrichment and meeting their dog's needs, which, in my mind is forefront, but in their minds, they're like, but she never talks about actually changing my dog's behavior. And so I think that what we can do as a positive reinforcement trainer specifically is actually tell and show clients what we have the ability to do as trainers, right? Yes, all of that other stuff matters, but I think that we could do a better job at actually putting it out in front of people and saying, okay, they can modify behavior, but so can we. And let me show you how we can do that in the positive reinforcement space. What it allows for is a conversation instead of people just moving right past your website or your Instagram or whatever, and that being a missed opportunity, as someone who you can converse with and maybe even change their mind on the tools that they're using. The other thing that I've noticed is that the diet side of the fitness industry rarely acknowledges that the other side even exists. Okay. Yes, they know intuitive eating exists. Yes, they know that these nutritionists are out here trying to get people to move away from dieting, but they hardly ever use that as a selling point when it comes to the products that they're selling. Whereas so often in dog training, especially on the positive reinforcement side of things, we become very emotionally charged about certain tools that are used with dogs or certain methods. And then we spend so much time attacking the other side when we could actually just be showing exactly the results that we as positive reinforcement trainers and advocates and guardians can create. So we should instead show that we can create the exact same behaviors as the balance trainers on Instagram or, anywhere essentially, who use these e-collars, who use prong collars can do. But instead of villainizing the tools that they're using, we can actually show them what we can do. And so one more thing that I just want to mention is that a lot of times we tend to villainize just consumers for using these tools, even if we're just a lay dog guardian out there. And what I would caution you on is to have conversations with people about why they're using these tools, because like I said, a lot of it has to do with the marketing that these companies and trainers have done in order to persuade people to use these tools. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap everything up that we've talked about and talk about, if you're a consumer and if you're a trainer, the things that we should remember and focus on moving forward. All right. So as a consumer, I want you to keep these things in mind. Make sure you're asking questions. There are no dumb questions in my mind. Whenever a client comes to me and says, I have a question for you, I say, ask. I want to answer your questions to the best of my ability. And also make sure you're looking for credentials when it comes to, whether you're watching a video or you're hiring a trainer yourself or you're attending a class, make sure you're looking for those credentials, because like I said, there is so much information out there. Anybody can call themselves a professional dog trainer. This is not an industry that is regulated. And so anybody can call themselves a professional dog trainer. So make sure you know the credentials of the person whose information you're taking in and potentially using with your own dog. Make sure that you're deep diving into both sides of the training industry so that you can learn from one side, maybe what you would never want to do with your dog, and from the other side, what you would prefer to do. Make sure that you're clearly communicating your needs when it comes to your dog, your needs and your dog's needs. Understand why the training is changing or modifying behavior. Investigate the language and marketing that dog trainers are using. So if there is a guarantee or if any type of scare tactics are being used in someone's marketing, run from them. There is not one trainer on this planet who can guarantee to you that your dog will do something 100% of the time because they are an animal. So if you see a guarantee, hightail it right out the door. And then make sure that you speak up if you are ever uncomfortable with how you or your dog is being treated. There is nothing wrong with, if you see or feel uncomfortable leaving, whether it be a class or a training with a certain trainer. And then if you are ever faced with a conversation, and I kind of just talked about this, if you're ever faced with a conversation around the methods used by others, come from a factual point of view rather than an emotionally charged one. And then for us as trainers, what I want us to do is make sure that we continue to be transparent. It is only fair to consumers that we are transparent in the things that we do, the things we are capable of, and making sure that, if something is out of your realm, that you are referring them on to somebody else. This goes without saying, but using positive reinforcement with the clients, as in the humans, as well as their dogs. Making sure to market towards your consumers' needs and then explain how you'll change or modify behavior and why, meeting their dog's needs is so important and why their dog's mental well-being is so important. And then make sure that you're using language that empowers your clients and their dogs and is not shame-seeking or utilizing any type of scare tactics. All right, guys, so that is all that I have for you today. So I will go ahead and take any questions that you may have right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Those are some really insightful, different places to look at things. I think we get really caught up in our own industries and our own passions and what we think things look like there, but it's really interesting to see how some of those same things occur in different places.
100%.
Yeah. If you have questions, folks, please feel free to put them in the chat box. Otherwise, a couple of quick notes. This is being recorded and I should have it uploaded to YouTube and the link sent out to you tomorrow, as long as everything cooperates. If you have any questions and need to reach out to Janee, I'll make sure the contact information is
oh, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. So you have contact information. And if you have any questions for us, you know where to find us. We've got webinars starting tomorrow and a couple of other really cool ones coming up over the next few months. So please check things out. And thank you, Janee, so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.